Hi everyone, it's Lemon, and today's Tarot Tuesday chat is going to be about the Shining Tribe Tarot. I love this tarot deck. It kind of fills me with an ancestral feeling, like I should be looking at cave drawings and linking my spirit and soul to the ancestors that painted on those caves. And I guess really this deck fills me with a sense of meditating on what is important in life. Bird song, stones, those really old structures that like pyramids and huts that were built back in ancient times with bare-handed labor, that type of like stones. In this instance, stone suit makes me think of like hard labor stuff, like work that had to be done that was laborious. And then trees is all about seasonal things, like learning the seasons, knowing astrology, kind of like earthly based elements and how that tied into how they lived in ancient times. And then rivers is the importance of water, life essentials. Let's scratch out, all the things that we consider essentials in life now, like cell phones. And what was the ancients and our ancestors' essential tools? And I think that rivers is a good suit for that. What they did, it kind of ties in with work a little bit to me, I guess. But I'm rambling here. I wanted to read up on, I've got the majors here. We're not really going to look at those today, but the deck is just so study worthy, for real. I read a lot in this book. Rachel Pollack has a lot of good information in here. And the deck overall is a really good tool to have if you're wanting to dive into the elemental, fundamental things of ancestor work. And that's kind of how I tie this deck is into my spiritual practice, into readings. It tends to be more so of a ancestor work type of a dynamic than more so than it is divinatory. So I wanted to read a little bit out of this book, and I have the excerpt off camera so that I don't have to read this on screen. But I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the deck and maybe show some cards off that we're going to be talking about. So to start, I want to say the Minor Arcana. I like kind of how Rachel Pollack puts in some of her books about the minor being where you need to start. Everyone seems to start with the majors when they learn a tarot deck or when they first get a tarot deck. It seems to be all in studying the majors. And for me, that's never how I studied. I always did study with the minors first. I love this tradition card. To kind of fill out ace through 10, what kind of tying into playing cards almost. Is how I kind of learned in the beginning. And then the majors, being called the majors, I always assumed that this would be like the last thing to look at. And so I like how she kind of says this, she kind of believes in the same thing. So she says, and I'm quoting here from the book, "The Minor Arcana is more than a collection of predictive formulas. While it lacks the major's grand vision, it shows us something just as valuable. The wondrous variety of life on all its many levels. It shows us nature, love, anger, grief, joy, work, commitment, fear, and confidence. And it shows us all of these in relation to one another. How each experience or attitude influences another, and how people's actions change lives of those around them. It reminds us that life takes many forms and teaches many lessons, and that no path is ever the final one or the only path possible. It shows us our choices." That is so beautiful. That paragraph is so beautiful because I believe the same thing. I believe that when you look through any minor arcana in the tarot, it's the everyday, the mundane things in life that we often take for granted. And so when we do a reading and a minor arcana comes up, we tend to, I did this in the beginning. I tended to see in the reading, were there any major arcanas, because I know those. And it was almost harder when you had all major or all minors to really dive with what those meant. What instance is this one card talking about? And then how could that instance tie into the next card, so to speak? So I felt like it was so much, the readings tended to wade through all the sludge and get down to brass tacks and what your life, okay, what this card means to you in your day-to-day life in a primitive way. And I think that's beautiful. Now, the next paragraph is on the majors, and I wanted to read that as well because, like I said, it's just, beautiful. The major arcana presents us with a vision of spiritual development, which we all know is the case. The majors for me tend to be, this is enlightenment. This is like the fool's journey to enlightenment. And I love that I am in agreement with Rachel Pollack on this. It teaches a powerful and distinct lesson about how we achieve cosmic understanding. It creates us, it's our own myth. This vision can give the trumps an even almost single-minded quality. They turn and dance and twist on themselves, going from temperance to the devil, for instance. But they are always keeping their goal, their ultimate destination, which is enlightenment. She states in a whole other section in the book about the Fool card. And let's see if you can get a good view of this. The Fool is flying out towards these mountains. These trails here are all of the many paths the Fool can take. And the goal is enlightenment, or in this case, the mountain range in the background, so to speak. But she descends, and you see all of the trees and all of these things down in the valley almost. That's the minor arcana. And the Fool flies out, ready to embrace enlightenment, but she has to descend because there's stuff she has to do on, like, the day-to-day things she must do. That's where her path lies. But at first, she doesn't really know that. She was like, oh, I'll just fly over. When she gets inevitably caught up in day-to-day life. That's why this card was drawn this way. And I love that interpretation, so to speak. Now, I want to talk about the suits for a second. Like literally just a second. The suits have been changed, but she states that each suit expresses a particular type of energy, almost, of course, elemental. So we've got trees, rivers, stones, and birds. And she wants to keep their elemental associations. She wants them to be prevalent, and she wants us to know automatically what each one of them represents. But she's trying to get to a base level here, I believe. There's so many layers in tarot that we often forget that Three of Swords, which would be birds. Yeah, I had that right. The Three of Birds is that heartache, right? That card we see in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck that just kind of pulls at our heartstrings a little bit. She wants us to cut all the layers of all the other tarot we know and really get down to brass tacks of what these could mean in terms of everyday life. What situation may they be talking about? And it seems that almost like the theme of this deck is art, the art of living, the art that goes into living the day-to-day life. And I'll explain that going suit by suit. Okay, air. We all know, if we're versed with the tarot, we kind of have an inkling that air is all about like the mental capacity, how we think, how we interpret things. And for this deck, it seems like the art, because that's what I was kind of going on. I saw a pattern of art. It's the art in which we think, the complexity of the mind. And I love that this kind of conveys the Four of Birds here. It kind of conveys that because this is a person that just happens to have an ibis mask on, that she's up there with the birds, like she's been doing the work, right? But she needs a break. She, he, whoever. They need a break. And I love that it's not in the act, it's in the situation that they're in, and looking at that, and not as specifics, but the way she drew these, it really makes me think of, like, let's think about what she's thinking taking this break up on this mountain. Not just that she needs a break. Let's really have these cards ask us the questions, and let's put ourselves in these situations, and what would we have? What would we think? How would our minds work? How complex is this person with the ibis's masks thoughts? How complex are they? So I love that the art of air in this instance is the complexity of our minds. And if you think about in terms of our minds today, how convoluted and stress inducing life feels to us now, and switch that to how would we know what the anxiety levels and mental awareness in ancient times was? We don't know how stressful their lives were, or if they went through life in a way that, they wouldn't have known, right? They wouldn't have known what anxiety is, but what instances of theirs would drag them down and have anxiety attacks, even though they wouldn't know what those are. So that's kind of how I think of the air suit. And then we have water, which is rivers. And I feel like that's the art of our emotions. And being this is rivers, I think of emotions as running water, and how it can move very fast. We're quick to our emotions, right? Especially in today's society. And they flow so rapidly. It could be like a waterfall, which we see, or slow and lazy, like a river. And it's like the art of the complexity of our emotions in this suit. So we've got the complexity of mind, the complexity of our emotions, and how we have to decide, and using our mentality and mindset, how the water flows. And if we are quick and we're just waterfalling our emotions onto everyone we know, into every situation, it's about being mindful and how to get back to a more lazy river mindset with our emotions, and being at peace with our emotions, whether we're quick to them or not, like quick to anger, so to speak. And I love that when I was thinking on this, and the art of it, the complexity of each element, and then we could look on individual cards, which we're not, but if we looked on individual cards, what is the complexity of each element? And that's where the base instinct, our base human instincts lie. Okay, so next we have fire. Fire is the art of passion. The art of passion, will, drive. We already kind of know that the wands is like that in a lot of tarot decks, right? But the growth we go through, that's what it is. It's the passion and will and drive we have. I think that lies in our drive for life, our hunger to grow, and how we're going to, no matter what. The trees have to grow. That's what they do. That's the main thing they do. Now, they also drink water, right? But the purpose of the tree is to grow. And sometimes we have to meditate on how much we've grown in life. I'm a different person than I was yesterday. Kind of like Alice a little bit. I'm not who I was yesterday. Of course you're not. Because you've had a thought that changed the way you had that thought since yesterday. And so I feel like in reading up on the suit of trees, the complexity of how we grow, And I feel like if we take that down just to the bare bones of what the trees represent, it's the complexity of how we grow. Not just in our mental state and not just in our emotions, but in the way we grow. And then being mindful of how we have grown and changed throughout our whole lives, and then look at it in like a microcosm way, how much we've changed just since yesterday. So meditating on that is the art of the tree suit, and in this case, the fire suit. And then we have the stones, which is the earth suit. And for me, that's the art and the magic of the earth, linking us to all those earth-based religions. So if we think the original religion is animism, everything is divine, right? More or less, let's just say. And I feel like if this is stones, and you see those lovely pictures on Pinterest where they take those river stones and they stack them up, that's the magic of earth. That's where it lies, the magic. And it's up to us to find the magic of the earth, find the magic in nature. Because I feel like, kind of like, if you've watched my other video or my Mindsight 2020 video, it was all on what happens to the brain when we go through a spiritual experience. And I talk about the fact that when we meditate, okay, you're in a meditative state, your brain's goal in that meditative state is to blur the line between you as an individual and you in a whole group with every living thing, nature-based thing, all living things out there, trees, beetles, birds, plants, herbs, whatever. You're one with that. So your brain's goal is to blur that line. You're no longer an individual, but you're one with everything, every living thing out there on this earthly plane, and maybe even beyond. I think that's the goal, and the complexity of all of that is the goal of this suit, the suit of earth. Now, this isn't a tarot video, so this might be different in every tarot deck. These elemental goals, these elemental associations, but when I study with this deck, and it says Awakening the Universal Spirit, this is about blending these two, coming forth with all the complexities of life, and then finding enlightenment. She even says in the book, the goal, of course, is enlightenment, but none of us may never reach that. We may stay the fool and just live our day-to-day complex lives without really ever visiting the lovers or getting in touch with the hermit or really knowing what it means to have a judicial thought patterning, how to balance our thoughts, right? We may go through our simple lives, our simple complex lives, simple and complex all at the same time, simple complex lives without ever having changed our perspective. But I love that quote from The Hobbit. There is no small thing in celebrating a simple life. And I love that because I feel like whether or not we choose to be mindful of the complexity or if we're just going to be complex with life, however complex or simple our life is, the life doesn't have to have a purpose. The life, you're going to live your life. Everyone is going to live their life the way they see fit. That's the point. That's the point of the minors being almost a little bit more important than the enlightenment suit all of its own, which is spirit over here. You can go through and be as complex as you want with all four of these suits, these elements, and never know enlightenment, and that's okay. It's about knowing that you're living. I think that's the point here. I love how Rachel Pollack, when we come back to the suits for just a second, she says that the individual cards show the variety of ways we experience the energy in our lives. And it's about recognizing those energies and the correlation of all of the elements here, being fire, water, earth, and air. And I love how she linked and named them, even though the concepts of the elementals elemental associations don't necessarily have to have a name. You could put river stones, you could put, you could put anything for stones, you could put anything for birds. It's whatever your correlation is with the air suit. What do you think of when you think of mental, your mentality and the complexity of our brains? Link that with something. Like for me, that's always been like kind of a feather thing, because feathers mean so much in my spiritual practice with the air suit, and I kind of link elementals in a kind of a pagan way. So that's kind of a cool concept. But you can, but I think she did it in a way that we would automatically know when a card would come up. Oh, that's got a bird in it, so that's air, right? Something like that. She tried to make it as simple, complex as possible. I think that's what happened here. I love also that she felt like the link of birds was because she believed that way back in these societies with earth-based religions, drum beat, okay, like a drum, mimicked heartbeat, but flutes mimic bird song. And I love that that's such a complex statement as well, because then you not only have all of these complex elemental correlations that you've made with the air suit, with birds, now you're hearing flute music. Along with when these cards come up, you're hearing flute music, you're hearing a water run, you're almost hearing the cycles of this tree. The apples, the apple flower, it flowers before the apples come, okay? Then the apples come, you're picking the apples, and then the dead and squishy apples in the almost winter. It's not really, they do that in the fall, and then by almost at the edge, the precipice of winter, there's like sludgy apples all over the ground because the season is over. And so I feel like I can hear and see all that. I can hear the thump of the apples leaving the tree. I mean, that's what I'm saying. We tie in all these senses because these elements are ingrained into us, and they have been since these ancient times that she's trying to make us meditate on. I think that's what's happening. I want to talk about the court cards for a second. Let's talk about the court cards. Look, I love that this Nine of Stones, this Nine of Pentacles, she really liked the writer, because this looks so much like the writer. She even has a bird here. I love that some of them you can really tell. And then some of them she made really look like the goddess, like these matrilineal societies. This knower of stones comes up for me a lot, and I love that this card represents the moment where your hair stands up on end. Like when the music is good, you get goosebumps. That's what I think about. Anyway, let's get back. Let me pull some of these out, and we'll talk about them. Now, I love that she changed the suits altogether. There's no hierarchy here. These are just things in the complexity that is life, the complexity that is in each element and suit, or therefore suit. She chose to pick these names, I'll call them for lack of a better term, as a way to really entertain the suit. Much like we don't see. And she kind of explains how each name is represented. The vision cards, she calls these, they follow she calls it a definitive progression. It's linking the cards more sharply to each other, a little like the Major Arcana with its step-by-step journey. And so therefore this needs to be laid out the same way, I think is what she wants us to know. And then also she says that it's about teaching us what the suits are about, like fundamentals, not so much the fundamentals like the number cards are, but the four main things we need to be focusing on in the suits themselves. That's kind of what I took from that. Now, the place. The place in all the suits is where we feel the most power. The place. That makes sense, right? So the place of birds is where they all flock to. The place of stones is in that mound, right? That mound of stones. How they're that sacred place where they're arranged in a specific way. The place of rivers is where the river meets. That's where the rivers are most important, right? That's just kind of what I'm saying. Place of trees, a grove. Like, there are more places. It's entering the suit and feeling its power in these specific places, whatever these places are, or wherever they are. She says that they're similar to the pages in that they show a state in which we are entering in the element. Just as the page begins to experience the suit, the place shows us getting to know what each suit and its qualities can give back to us. But we have to be at this place to know that. I think that this is more of a internal place, but it's still relevant and still prevalent in learning the suit. That's my take. Let's see, which one is this? Stones. Then we have the knower. Now, she says that the knower is all about understanding the finer workings of the suit. And this is kind of like the shaman of the suits. So we've had a place, right? And now we can internalize and figure out, you know, the power of the suit, the power of those elements. But then each suit has its own shaman, for lack of a better term, that knows all the inner workings of the suit. Like the stone, the knower of stones, the knower of birds, the knower of rivers, and the knower of trees. I like that she has personified these to make them look more shamanistic in a way that will tell us that these knowers do not have to necessarily be people. They could be almost archetypal figures, but they're figures nonetheless that know the inner workings of whatever the suit is we're working with. She says that the knowers are like the knights, for the knowers take on the task of really coming to terms with the element. The knowers have a heroic quality, especially the knower of rivers and stones. She says they are the mythic companions of the suits. And I think that's just beautiful. I love all the little tiny details she puts in the cards because she's really trying to link a whole bunch of things. When she drew all this, she doesn't just put this one figure here or this one figure here. She really tries to, with the squirrels and the shining woman, the yin yang, she really tries to pull from all sorts of things. I love these bird feet. And, of course, other prints, but the bird feet is what caught my eye because it's the knower of birds, right? There's bound to be birds that are all over this, this card. And the river, I like how, I love her robe. I have a robe that looks a lot like that. But it's like she's holding the snake and holding the fish. The fish being the epitome of water and the epitome of the river, and then the snake being both. Not to mention the regenerative powers that the snakes tend to have and how we can be washed in the rivers. You know, as far as a transformation, almost in a regenerative fashion. And then the trees, I love that this one seems to be coming right up, almost like Kundalini energy, and blossoming out right here. Kind of in her heart chakra, almost. I'm not really versed with chakras, but and then really fast, okay, this is just an overview of, it's kind of like why I love this deck. That's what this video is probably pretty much going to be about. And then we have the gift. Now she does say that the gifts are like the queens, and with the gift she says she goes more in depth into the element. The queens, okay, the gifts go more into the element, and this is where we truly appreciate its power, the power of the suit. I think that it being named the gift, it's almost like we are realizing the power of the suit and then knowing how to utilize that power, utilize whatever the suit is. once we understand the gift of the suit, whatever it is, okay, I love the symbolism in here, because what is the, like, when you think of what could stones give to us, what is the gift that stones give to us? Stability, right? The gift of stability, the gift of work, labor, knowing the difference, okay? The gift of carving these, like, carvings out where people have carved these Venus of Willendorf statues, and statues in general, carvings in general, how they've left clues for us. That's the gift of stones, right? How the ancients have left gifts for us to find now to this day. And then the gift of birds. What does bird song give to us? Peace of mind, right? When we hear certain vibrational music, especially like flute, shamanistic music, it gives us like a peace of mind. That's the gift of birds, which is the air suit, which makes perfect sense. And then the gift of rivers. All these rivers coming together, going with the flow, going with the river. Okay, think Pocahontas. I never step in the same river twice. That's the gift it gives us. Knowing that about that element. And then last, the gift of trees, the gift of growth. Realizing we have to grow. Realizing, I like that I made the analogy and then there's apples in this card. I love that. It's like realizing that we have to grow. Realizing that there's a lot of blending that we have to do to grow. A lot of things that we have to mesh together. And then what happens when we utilize the power? Once we've understood, okay, so we're going back through the courts now, the place. We go where the power is imminent, okay, knowing where the power is imminent in the suit. Then find someone that has the inner workings and the inner knowings of the suit. That can be internal, okay, this can be an archetype. And then with the gifts, we learn to utilize the gifts. But it's in using the gifts that we become the speaker, hence closing the circle. We've come full circle now. Instead of knowing and understanding, we know it all now. Not all, I don't want to say all. I want to say that we know enough now to pass the knowledge down to someone else. That's the gift of the speaker. That's what the speaker is. The speaker is the storyteller. The speaker is the one that has the knowledge that's going to pass it down. I feel like another name for this would be storyteller. Wisdom keeper. Right? This is the one whose knowledge is going to be in books and be written on the cave walls and drawn, and this is where it's like the responsibility to share the elemental power that each suit has with others. And then what we're doing is we're serving the macrocosm by doing this and becoming the speaker. And that's the goal of life, right? However simple our life is, when we look at this deck, I think of a simple life. However simple our ancient ancestors' life was, their ultimate goal was to become the speaker, therefore pass knowledge down. And we haven't even touched on the majors. And look at how all the stuff that the minors have taught us. Now, like I said already, the today's video was just love of the Minor Arcana of the Shining Tribe, because I feel like I had been studying this deck. Now, y'all all know I study a lot in my tarot workings, but I've been studying and reading in this book and working with the cards for a while. And typically, I pull out a couple of cards like this, or I work just with the speakers, and I just kind of, I bounce around. That's kind of how my brain likes to process things, instead of going in like a chronological order. So I've been reading and then, really researching some of the symbolism in the card offshoots of what I can find in the book. And it's really been so profound that I wanted to share what all I've learned with you guys. So that's what I did. And I love the minors in this deck. And we might touch more on the majors, because I feel like when Rachel Pollack talks about enlightenment in whatever deck she has created in her life, we shut up and listen. So this really does need to be something that we study. and everything Rachel Pollack does is gold. So I believe you can still find this. Check out Nina's channel because she says that she's going to be actually doing some things with this year. I believe she's actually actively studying with this. I'll leave her channel link below. She's over at Shuffle Tarot. That's the name of her channel. Who knows what we'll dive into next or what Tarot Tuesday will bring, but come back in a couple of Tuesdays and I'll meet you there. Much love, people.